You've been living with a noise so constant you've forgotten it's there. A noise that follows you into every room, shadows you through every decision, and whispers at the back of your mind, even when the world around you is quiet. It's the hum of unfinished thoughts, looping worries, replayed conversations, imagined failures, and the thousand invisible pressures stacked inside your chest. You call it thinking, but deep down, you know it's something else. It's the storm you've mistaken for normal, and it has shaped you more than you admit, because your mind doesn't rest. It runs. It races. It churns. It builds entire worlds out of fear and doubt and expectation, and it convinces you that you must pay attention to every single thought. You lie awake at night, not because you choose to, but because your mind refuses to release you. Every silence becomes a battlefield. Every pause becomes a trap. Every moment alone becomes another moment where the noise floods in. But here's the truth you've never been told. The noise is not a part of you. It is not your identity. It is not your destiny. It is a habit your mind learned over years of being untrained, unmanaged, and overwhelmed. And just because you've lived with it for so long doesn't mean you must live with it forever. You are standing at the edge of a line. On one side is the chaos that has drained you for years. On the other side is the clarity you've been searching for. All that stands between them is mastery. The mastery you're about to build. Look at your life. Look at how much energy the noise has taken from you. Look at the decisions you avoided because you were lost in analysis. Look at the opportunities you delayed because you doubted yourself. Look at the conversations you rehearsed 100 times but never actually had. Look at the way you've carried the weight of what if and maybe later and I'm not ready. You've been fighting battles inside your mind that no one can see, and the saddest part is that the battles never end because the noise never stops. You tell yourself you're tired, but it's not your body that's exhausted. It's your mind. It's the noise, the constant friction of thoughts that don't serve you, the constant pressure to fix everything in your head before you take a single step in the real world, the constant belief that if you don't think about something from every angle, you'll somehow lose control. But you never had control. The noise did. And that's the pain most people never admit out loud. The mind that never stops thinking is not a gift. It's a cage. A beautiful, complicated, endlessly creative cage. One that traps you behind doubts, behind fears, behind the illusion that thinking more will somehow save you. It won't. Thinking more only amplifies the noise. What saves you is learning to choose your thoughts, shape your focus, and quiet the chaos on command. That's why you're here. Not to be inspired for a moment, but to be transformed over time. Not to escape the noise temporarily, but to build a mind that obeys you, answers to you, and serves you. A mind that becomes your weapon instead of your weakness. Because clarity is power. Focus is power. And a quiet mind, a truly quiet mind, is unstoppable. But before we go deeper, you need to understand something essential. Nothing changes until you admit the truth. And the truth is simple. The noise has been running your life. It has shaped your identity, your choices, your routines, your relationships. It has pulled you into cycles of worry, distraction, procrastination, emotional tension, and mental fatigue. It has convinced you that you are the thoughts you think, but you are not your thoughts. You are the one who decides which thoughts matter. This script will teach you how to reclaim that power. Step by step, layer by layer, we will separate you from the chaos you've lived with for far too long. You will learn to slow the mind that never slows. You will learn to break the patterns that have stolen your peace. You will learn to stand in silence without feeling the need to fill it with noise. You will learn to breathe in a way that anchors your awareness and steadies your emotions. You will learn to focus with intensity, to act with intention, and to move through life with clarity instead of confusion. And yes, you will learn to quiet the mind, not by force, not by pretending the thoughts don't exist, but by rising above them, by becoming the kind of person whose inner world is steady, grounded, and unshaken. The kind of person who moves through life with a calm that others can feel. The kind of person who no longer fears their own mind. This is the beginning, the doorway, the moment you step out of the storm you've lived in and into the clarity you've been craving. Everything that follows will teach you how to take back control, how to rebuild the way you think, and how to become the master of your inner world. So take a breath, let the noise sit where it is, and follow me into the first step, awareness, the place where your transformation begins, right now. Chapter 1, The Unseen Enemy, the Mind on Autopilot. You move through your days believing you are choosing your thoughts, but most of the time, your mind is choosing for you. It fires off reactions, assumptions, fears, and memories without permission. It pulls you into old loops, old patterns, old versions of yourself. And because the noise feels familiar, you call it normal. But normal does not mean intentional. Normal does not mean controlled. What you think of as your mind is often nothing more than a machine running scripts you never wrote. This is the unseen enemy, the mind on autopilot. A mind that wakes up before you do. A mind that decides what you feel before you decide what you think. A mind that rushes ahead of you, dragging your attention with it. You want clarity, but clarity cannot survive inside a mind that keeps repeating yesterday. Autopilot thinking locks you inside cycles you never question, and those cycles shape your life far more than you realize. Think about how many moments you lose each day. Moments where you react instead of respond. Moments where worry jumps ahead of logic. Moments where anger rises before understanding. Moments where you scroll, distract, avoid, and escape without even noticing you're doing it. These are not conscious choices. These are reflexes. These are mental habits. These are the fingerprints of a mind that learned to run itself. And that's the painful truth. The autopilot mind doesn't care about your goals. It doesn't care about who you want to become. It only cares about what's familiar. So it keeps you anxious because anxiety is familiar. It keeps you doubting because doubt is familiar. It keeps you overthinking because overthinking is familiar. Familiar is safe to the mind, even when it destroys your potential. You can feel the cost of this. Lost time, lost energy, lost opportunities, lost peace. You can sense how much of your life has been lived in reaction, not direction, because the autopilot took the wheel before you even noticed you'd let go. But there is another way to live. A conscious way. A deliberate way. A way where thoughts do not drag you but follow you. a way where you choose the direction of your mind instead of being carried by the current of habit. This chapter is the first step in that shift, because before you can quiet the mind, you must reveal how it currently controls you. You must expose the invisible patterns that steer your emotions and decisions every day. Picture your mind as a river. When it flows on autopilot, it carries debris, old fears, old stories, old identities. It sweeps you downstream without mercy. But when you become conscious, you become the one steering the current. You become the one who chooses what stays, what goes, and what deserves your energy. Awareness turns the river from a force that controls you into a force you command. But right now, awareness is the missing link. You cannot change what you refuse to notice. And most people never notice their thoughts. They only notice the consequences. They notice the tension, the exhaustion, the lack of focus. They notice the emotional storms but never see the clouds forming. They notice the chaos in their day but never the autopilot patterns causing it. So the first weapon against chaos is not discipline. It's not positivity. It's not trying to silence your thoughts by force. The first weapon is recognition. The moment you observe a thought instead of becoming it, you break the spell. The moment you question a fear instead of obeying it, you weaken its grip. The moment you pause before reacting, the autopilot begins to lose control. Your power begins in that pause, in that space between thought and response, in the awareness that says, I see what my mind is doing, and I do not have to follow. That single moment can reshape the entire direction of your life, because once you see the autopilot, you can override it. Once you see the loop, you can break it. Once you see the enemy, you can defeat it. And this is where your transformation truly begins. Not in silence yet, but in sight. In seeing what has always been inside you, moving without your permission. In understanding the machinery behind the noise. In realizing that your mind is powerful, but only when you take the wheel. This chapter is the invitation to wake up, to step out of the fog of automatic thinking, to stand at the edge of your inner world and look directly at the patterns that have shaped you. Because in the next chapter, you will learn why the mind clings to fear, why it repeats worries, why it loops the same stories again and again. But for now, you must take this first step with full awareness. The noise is not random. It is programmed. And starting today, you will learn how to rewrite the code. As you move forward, remember this. Awareness is a turning point. It marks the end of unconscious living and the beginning of intentional action. Let it sharpen your focus and prepare you for the deeper work ahead, your strength. Chapter 2. Why Overthinking Feels Like Survival. You think you're overthinking because something is wrong with you, but the truth is far more primitive. Your mind is trying to keep you alive. It repeats worries, plays out worst-case scenarios, and replays old mistakes because it believes that fear equals safety. It believes that if it forces you to anticipate every danger, you'll somehow avoid getting hurt. Overthinking is not a flaw. It is a survival strategy your brain learned long before you ever questioned it. The human mind was built for danger, not deadlines. Built for predators, not possibilities. Built for survival, not self-mastery. And this is why your thoughts spiral when life feels uncertain. Your mind scans for threats you cannot see, searching for anything that might harm you. Rejection, failure, embarrassment, loss. It doesn't know the difference between a tiger and a text message, between true danger and imagined disaster. So it reacts the same way to both. Protect, panic, prepare for the worst. This is why worry feels automatic, why fear feels familiar, why mental loops feel unavoidable. Your brain evolved to keep you on alert, to assume danger even when none is present. It isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to save you. But survival mode has a cost. It drains the energy you need for clarity. It steals the focus you need for progress. It traps you inside a constant state of mental tension where your thoughts race faster than your actions. Think about what overthinking does to your day. It slows you down. It makes simple decisions feel heavy. It turns small problems into giant threats. It keeps you stuck in preparation instead of execution. You replay conversations you can't change. You predict outcomes you can't control. You try to solve problems that don't exist yet. This is the mind on defense. Constantly scanning, constantly preparing, constantly exhausting you. And the exhaustion is real, because survival thinking burns through your mental fuel. It keeps cortisol high, attention low, and perspective narrow. When your mind believes you're in danger, it shuts down higher thinking, creativity, vision, intuition, calm. You can't access your strongest self when your brain is trying to protect your most fragile self. You can't plan clearly when you're busy imagining everything that could go wrong. But here's the turning point. Survival mode might be automatic, but it is not permanent. You can retrain your mind to operate from clarity instead of fear. You can teach it that not every uncertainty is a threat. You can show it that calm is safe, that silence is safe, that slowing down doesn't mean danger. It means direction. Your brain listens to your patterns. When you respond differently, it rewires. This is where your power begins. Not in trying to stop thoughts by force, but in teaching your mind that it no longer needs to protect you from everything. You replace hypervigilance with awareness. You replace fear with observation. You replace panic with presence. When you breathe deeply, you signal safety. When you pause, you break the pattern. When you act instead of overanalyze, you train your brain to trust your leadership. Imagine living from that state. A mind that notices danger but doesn't invent it. A mind that considers possibilities without drowning in them. A mind that evaluates risks without losing peace. This is the shift from survival to purpose, from fear to clarity, from autopilot to conscious control. And it's not a distant dream. It's a skill you build, one moment at a time. But let's go deeper into why these loops feel so convincing. Overthinking feels like survival because your mind treats thoughts as warnings and emotions as proof. When a fear appears, your brain doesn't question it. It assumes urgency. When doubt rises, it assumes danger. The survival brain reacts first and reflects later, pulling you into cycles that feel logical only because they feel familiar. This is why you can know you're safe, yet still feel pressure. Know the situation isn't serious, yet still respond like your future depends on it. The mind is not trying to be accurate. It is trying to be protective. And when protection becomes a habit, fear becomes your default lens. This awareness begins your shift right now. But before you can fully claim that clarity, you need to understand what stands in the way. You need to see the hidden cost of carrying every worry, every scenario, every imagined threat. Because the next chapter will reveal the weight you've been holding, the mental clutter that fills your inner space and suffocates your clarity. And once you see that weight clearly, you'll be ready to release it. Chapter 3. The Weight You Can't See. Mental Clutter. You carry a weight no one else can see. A weight that presses against your thoughts long before the day even begins. It is the weight of too many decisions, too many expectations, too many unfinished things pulling at your mind from every direction. You wake up already behind, already overloaded, already fighting to keep up with a world that demands more than your mental space can hold. And quietly, silently, without warning, the clutter builds. Thought by thought, obligation by obligation, noise by noise. Your mind becomes a crowded room where everything speaks at once. Notifications tug at your attention. Responsibilities whisper reminders. Old conversations echo in the corners. Unanswered messages sit on your conscience like stones. The world never stops pouring information into you, and you never stop trying to carry all of it. You scroll, you respond, you react, and every tiny decision chips away at your clarity. This is cognitive overload, the slow suffocation of your inner space. Most people never see it happening. They don't realize how much energy each small distraction steals. They don't notice how a mind filled with fragments can't focus long enough to create anything meaningful. You try to think clearly, but clarity can't exist when your attention is scattered across 1,000 invisible threads. You try to calm your thoughts, but calmness can't survive when everything around you screams for your attention. Your mind is drowning, not because you're weak, but because you were never taught how to protect it. Mental clutter is not just chaos, it is weight. Every unfinished task, every unanswered call, every avoided decision piles onto your mind like layers of fog. And that fog blinds you. It makes small things feel overwhelming. It makes simple steps feel complicated. It makes you hesitate, procrastinate, lose momentum. You're not lazy, you're overloaded. You're not unfocused, you're carrying too much. You're not broken, you're buried under noise. But here's the truth you've been missing. Clarity is not something you stumble into. It's not something you wait for. It is something you create. Deliberately, ruthlessly, intentionally. It begins the moment you decide that your mind is too valuable to be filled with everything. It begins when you realize that focus is not built by adding more discipline, but by removing what drains you. It begins when you look at your mental space and understand that not everything deserves to live there. Your peace is not lost. It is crowded. And the moment you choose to clear the unnecessary, you begin to reclaim the essential. You begin to notice the difference between what matters and what merely takes up space. You begin to feel the weight lifting, not because life becomes easier, but because you stop carrying what was never yours to hold. The clutter begins to fall away the moment you stop feeding it. This is where discipline enters. Not the harsh discipline of forcing yourself to do more, but the inner discipline of choosing what deserves your attention. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is protection. It protects your mind from noise, from distraction, from unnecessary decisions. It creates room for clarity to breathe. It creates room for focus to grow. It creates room for you to think with intention instead of drowning in obligation. Imagine what your mind would feel like without the clutter. Imagine waking up with space instead of pressure. Imagine moving through your day with intention instead of reaction. Imagine a mind so clear that thoughts flow instead of collide. That clarity is not a fantasy. It is the result of mental discipline. It is the result of deciding that your inner world matters more than the endless noise outside of it. But before you can master discipline, you must first see the clutter for what it is. The silent thief of your focus, your energy, your peace. You must recognize how much it has taken from you and how much it continues to take. Only then can you begin the work of clearing it. Only then can you understand the cost of letting everything into your mind. And that understanding will prepare you for what comes next. Because the next step in your transformation is not simply clearing space. It is learning how to guard it. It is learning how to create a mind that feels like a calm room, not a chaotic marketplace. A mind that responds instead of reacts. A mind that chooses instead of absorbs. A mind disciplined enough to stay clear no matter how loud the world becomes. And that journey begins now as you step into the next chapter of your awareness. Clarity is not a gift given to a lucky few. It is a skill shaped through consistent practice. When you learn to pause before allowing new information in, you begin to reclaim control. When you learn to finish what matters and release what doesn't, your mind becomes lighter. Over time, you realize that focus is not about forcing your mind to obey. It's about removing the chaos that weakens it. And with that clarity, your inner strength finally begins to rise. Chapter 4. The Discipline of Stillness. There's a kind of power most people overlook, a strength they never train, never develop, never even recognize. It isn't loud, it isn't forceful, it doesn't shout, rush, or demand attention. This power is stillness. Not the stillness of doing nothing, not the stillness of passivity or laziness, but the stillness of command. The stillness of someone who refuses to be pulled by every noise around them. The stillness of a mind that stands firm, regardless of the chaos outside. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the presence of control. Most people live in reaction. Their attention dragged here, their emotions tugged there, their thoughts spinning like loose wheels on uneven ground. They are constantly responding, constantly absorbing, constantly overwhelmed. Their minds are like open doors in a storm, letting in every gust of wind, every fragment of noise, every unwanted distraction. But the truly disciplined, they close the door. They build a foundation inside themselves that nothing outside can shake. They understand that stillness is not a luxury. It is the core of mental strength. Because the truth is this: a chaotic mind cannot lead a disciplined life. A scattered mind cannot build anything lasting. A restless mind cannot hear its own wisdom. If your mind never stops, if your thoughts collide at high speed, if your attention darts from one thing to another, you will feel exhausted long before the day even begins. You will feel defeated not because you lack ability, but because you lack inner stillness. The discipline that allows your mind to reset, replenish, and rise. Stillness is the reset. Stillness is the sharpening of the blade. Stillness is the moment you take back authority over your own mind. But understand this: stillness is not easy. It is not natural. Your mind is wired to run, to anticipate, to protect. Survival taught it to constantly scan for threats, constantly analyze, constantly predict. But survival and peace do not operate the same way. What kept you alive is not necessarily what will help you live. Stillness must be trained. It must be practiced. It must be strengthened like a muscle that grows through deliberate repetition. When you sit with yourself, not with your phone, not with noise, not with distractions, your mind will resist. It will try to pull you back into the familiar chaos. It will try to distract you with old memories, random thoughts, imagined scenarios. This is not failure. This is conditioning. Your mind is simply doing what you've taught it to do. Every moment you spent multitasking, every time you reacted without thinking, every time you filled silence with stimulation, you were training your mind to be restless. You were teaching your mind that stillness is uncomfortable and chaos is normal. But now, you choose differently. Now, you choose discipline. Now, you choose to reclaim the power that comes from being fully present, fully aware, fully in command. Stillness is the discipline of sitting inside yourself without running. Stillness is the discipline of noticing your thoughts without being ruled by them. Stillness is the discipline of letting noise exist without letting it enter. This is where the true strength begins. The strength to pause before reacting, to observe before responding, to choose before being pulled. In a world addicted to speed, stillness becomes a superpower. In a world filled with noise, stillness becomes a shield. In a world overflowing with distractions, stillness becomes your clarity. You will notice something powerful once you begin practicing this discipline. Your thoughts become sharper. Your decisions become cleaner. Your emotions become steadier. You begin to see that stillness does not make you slow. It makes you precise. It does not make you passive. It makes you intentional. It does not make you quiet. It makes you powerful. Because when your mind is still, you stop wasting energy on noise. You stop reacting to every small disruption. You stop carrying battles that don't belong to you. Your mental space becomes organized, calm, and strong. And from that place, you can build, create, plan, and act without being dragged into unnecessary chaos. Stillness gives you back your strength. Stillness gives you back your focus. Stillness gives you back yourself. And here's the truth you must understand. Stillness is not about escaping life. It is about facing life with a mind that is prepared, grounded, and unshakable. The world will not slow down. Chaos will not disappear. Noise will not stop. But you can rise above it, not by fighting the noise, but by building a place inside yourself where the noise has no power. This is the discipline of stillness, choosing clarity over chaos, choosing presence over distraction, choosing strength over reaction. When you master stillness, you stop being pulled by the world. The world begins to move around you. You become centered. You become grounded. You become immovable. The next step in this journey is learning the tool that anchors stillness into the body, the tool that steadies the mind, the tool that reconnects you with control even in the most overwhelming moments. That tool is your breath. Before you can command your thoughts, you must be able to command your breathing. Before you can master stillness, you must understand the rhythm that governs your mind from deep within your body. Your breath is not just air. It is the switch that shifts your mind from chaos to clarity. And in the next chapter, you will learn how to use it with precision, intention, and discipline. Because stillness begins in the mind, but mastery begins in the breath. Chapter 5. Breathing. The anchor beneath the storm. There is a moment in every storm where the mind races, where thoughts collide, where panic rises like a tide you cannot stop. And in that moment, before the chaos overwhelms you, there is one thing you can always reach for: your breath. Most people ignore it. Most people let it run shallow and frantic, rising only in the chest, barely noticed as a signal of tension. Yet the breath is the simplest, most powerful anchor beneath the storm. It is the bridge between thought and body, between chaos and calm, between reaction and control. Your breath tells your mind what to do before your mind even realizes it has a choice. Shallow, tight, hurried, your breath carries fear. Deep, steady, intentional, your breath carries command. Notice it now. Close your eyes and feel the weight of the air moving in and out of your body. Most of the time, you take it for granted, like a background noise you never really hear. But the moment you tune in, you realize something profound. The breath is not just a biological function. It is a tool, a weapon, a reset button for your entire nervous system. Each inhale draws in focus. Each exhale releases tension. Each conscious breath is a signal to your mind that it is allowed to slow down, that it is allowed to settle, that it is allowed to regain mastery over itself. And mastery is not built in chaos. Mastery is built in control, and control begins with awareness of the most basic rhythm inside you. Think about the last time your mind felt scattered, the last time your attention fractured into a dozen useless directions. Did you notice your breathing? It was probably short, shallow, jittery, the same way a frightened animal breathes when cornered. That frantic breath fueled the runaway thoughts, fed the panic, and trapped you in cycles of overthinking. Contrast that with a deep, controlled breath, one that fills your lungs completely, that anchors your spine, that pulls your awareness back into the present moment. That breath does not fight the storm. It absorbs it, contains it, transforms it. With every intentional inhale, you reclaim space inside your mind. With every deliberate exhale, you release the chaos that has held you hostage. Breathing is not passive. It is not a remedy for weakness. It is the first act of strength. Breathwork is a discipline, and like all disciplines, it requires repetition, focus, and commitment. At first, your mind will resist. It will tell you it has more important things to do. It will pull you back into old patterns of shallow panic. It will whisper that nothing is changing, that control is impossible, that calm is not real. This is normal. Resistance is part of the process. But if you continue to anchor yourself in the rhythm of the inhale and exhale, something shifts. Your nervous system begins to listen. Your heart slows. Your thoughts settle. The noise does not vanish, but it loses its authority over you. And in that loss of control, you gain the first taste of freedom. Imagine the power of a mind trained to breathe like this at will. A mind that notices tension rising and immediately calls on the body to respond with calm, not panic. A mind that meets distraction with focus, fear with grounded awareness, overwhelm with composure. That is not an imagined skill. That is a skill anyone can develop. It is available to you now, not somewhere in the future. Each breath is an exercise, each conscious moment a training session, each inhalation and exhalation a building block of mental resilience. This is the work that underpins all higher forms of focus, all deliberate action, all disciplined thinking. Without this foundation, everything else is scattered, chaotic, and fragile. With it, nothing can shake you. Breathing is also a bridge, the bridge between the internal and external world, between thought and action. A calm, anchored breath signals to the mind that clarity is possible, that tension is optional, that focus can exist even amid pressure. It is the first step in reclaiming authority over your inner state and the precursor to mastering attention. When you pair stillness with breath, the mind begins to align, focus begins to sharpen, and distractions begin to lose their grip. This is where preparation for deliberate action begins. Before you plan, before you decide, before you execute, you breathe. The storm remains outside, but inside there is command. Inside there is control. Inside there is you. And so, every time the chaos rises, every time the noise threatens to pull you under, return to this anchor. Let the inhale ground you. Let the exhale release everything that does not serve you. Let the rhythm of your breath remind you that mastery begins from within. Breath is simple, but it is not simplistic. It is the weapon, the shield, and the foundation of all mental strength. And when you combine it with intention, focus, and practice, you create a mind that does not merely survive the storm, it directs it. The next step, after you have anchored yourself in breath, is to channel this calm into unshakable focus, to move from stability into deliberate action. And that is exactly where the journey continues. Chapter 6. Focus. The blade that cuts through noise. Focus is not just a skill. It is a blade, a sharp, disciplined edge that slices through the noise inside your mind and exposes the truth of what matters. Most people walk through life with dull attention, drifting from one distraction to another, wondering why they feel overwhelmed, anxious, and powerless. But you are starting to see something different. You are starting to understand that a wandering mind is not harmless. It is a weakened mind, a mind that never settles long enough to build strength, a mind that dissolves its own potential by scattering itself across 100 trivial thoughts. Focus is the antidote. Focus is the weapon. Focus is the mental clarity that transforms chaos into direction. Every time your attention fractures, your power leaks. You might not feel it immediately, but you feel its consequences. The fatigue, the indecision, the emotional noise that builds layer after layer until you no longer know what you truly want. When the mind jumps from thought to thought, from screen to screen, from impulse to impulse, it becomes a storm of unfinished intentions. And a storm cannot lead you forward. Only a blade can. Only a mind honed to concentrate on one task, one moment, one purpose at a time. Focus is how you take back control from the countless forces that pull you away from yourself. The world profits from your distraction, but you profit from your focus. There is a reason anxiety fades when you commit your attention to a single target. The mind cannot panic and concentrate fully at the same time. The moment you direct your focus toward something intentional, your nervous system stabilizes. Your breath deepens. Your thoughts slow. This is not magic. It is biology. The mind in focus is the mind in command. And yet most people treat focus as an optional luxury, something they hope will appear when they need it. But focus is never accidental. It is trained, refined, sharpened through repetition and discipline. Just like the body, the mind becomes what you force it to practice. If you practice scattered attention, you strengthen chaos. If you practice concentration, you strengthen clarity. Consider what happens when you give your full attention to one task. Time shifts. Distractions fade. The mind stops wandering because you have given it a place to land. That grounded attention is a doorway into flow, into deep work, into the state where your potential stops hiding and begins to reveal itself. You have felt glimpses of it before. Those rare moments when everything clicks, when you lose awareness of yourself and merge with the task in front of you. That is not coincidence. That is the mind finally experiencing what it was built for. A focused mind is not tense or forced. It is free. Free from noise. Free from confusion. Free from the exhausting pressure of trying to hold a dozen thoughts at once. You must understand this clearly. Your focus is your life. Wherever it goes, your energy follows. Wherever your energy goes, your results follow. Your relationships, your goals, your habits, your identity, all of them are shaped by the quality of your attention. If your attention is fractured, your life becomes fractured. If your attention is strong, your life becomes strong. Every powerful transformation begins with the decision to direct your focus instead of surrendering it. Every goal worth pursuing requires the discipline to stay with it long after your mind wants to wander. This is where strength is built. In the moments when distraction calls your name and you refuse to answer. Focus also demands something many people fear: silence. When you commit to one task, you strip away the noise that keeps you comfortable. You confront your own thoughts without escape. You confront boredom. You confront impatience. You confront the uncomfortable truth that mastery takes time. And time spent deeply is time spent without constant stimulation. But if you push through that initial resistance, you discover a different kind of power. The power of sustained attention. This is the strength that separates the average from the exceptional. Not talent, not intelligence. Attention, the ability to hold your mind steady while others scatter theirs in every direction. To sharpen your focus, you must train it like a blade. Choose one task and stay with it. Remove the unnecessary. Create boundaries for your attention the same way you would protect something valuable, because it is valuable. Your focus is not infinite. Every distraction steals a piece of it. Every interruption dulls its edge. But every moment of deliberate concentration sharpens it again. And the sharper your focus becomes, the more you realize how much noise you once tolerated. How much mental clutter you accepted as normal. How much energy you wasted fragmenting yourself into pieces instead of directing yourself toward one powerful direction. A focused mind is dangerous. Dangerous to fear, dangerous to excuses, dangerous to the old patterns that kept you small. When your attention becomes precise, your actions become powerful. Your decisions become clear. Your path becomes defined. And the chaos that once ruled your mind begins to shrink, because focus does not coexist with noise. It cuts through it. This is the turning point. This is where you stop reacting to life and start shaping it. You have mastered stillness. You have mastered the breath. Now you are learning to master attention itself. And where focus goes next is into the deeper chambers of the mind. the place where you begin to rewire your thoughts, reshape your patterns, and rebuild the internal architecture of who you are becoming. Chapter 7: Rewriting the Mental Script. There comes a moment in every transformation when you finally see it. The truth that shakes the foundation of everything you believed about yourself. Your thoughts are not facts. They never were. They feel real because you have repeated them. They feel solid because you have obeyed them. But they are not the truth. They are scripts, written in moments of fear, shaped by old wounds, reinforced by habit, and left unchallenged for years. And when you begin to understand that, when you finally recognize that your mind is not a mirror but a storyteller, everything changes. You stop living as a character trapped in a narrative you did not choose, and you start becoming the author of the next chapter of your life. Most people never reach this point. They take every thought personally. They assume every anxiety is a prediction, every worry a warning, every negative idea a reflection of their identity. This is the great lie. A lie that keeps the mind on autopilot. A lie that feeds insecurity. A lie that convinces you to trust the voice that hurts you more than the world ever has. But today, you step into a different kind of awareness. The awareness that not every thought deserves your belief. The mind generates stories the way the heart beats. Automatically, relentlessly, and without checking if those stories serve you. And unless you interrupt those patterns, you will continue replaying the same mental script day after day, year after year, wondering why nothing changes. Rewriting your inner script begins with one courageous act: questioning the thought instead of obeying it. When a voice in your mind whispers, "You're not enough," you ask, "According to who?" When fear says, "You will fail," you respond, "How do you know?" When doubt claims, "You always mess this up," you challenge it with evidence of your resilience. This is how the mental script begins to shift. Not by suppressing thoughts, but by confronting them. Thoughts lose their power when you shine a light on them. They weaken when you stop treating them like commands and start treating them like possibilities. And in this confrontation, you reclaim authority over the narrative playing inside your head. The truth is that anxious thoughts are not messages. They are habits. They repeat because you've rehearsed them. They echo because your brain is trying to predict danger, trying to protect you from disappointment, from failure, from uncertainty. But in its attempt to protect you, it traps you. It builds a cage out of imagined scenarios and what-ifs, blinding you to opportunities and choking your confidence. The shift comes when you realize that the purpose of fear is survival, not accuracy. Fear is not a compass. It is an alarm. And alarms are meant to be assessed, not obeyed without question. When you understand this, you begin to take your mental power back. The next step is replacement. After you challenge the story, you write a new one. A narrative rooted in strength, truth, and possibility. When the mind says, "You failed before," you replace it with, "I learned, and I'm stronger now." When it says, "You can't handle this," you answer with, "I've handled more than this." When it says, "You're not ready," you respond, "No one is ever ready. I move anyway." This is not blind positivity. This is reframing. The process of taking the raw material of your thoughts and shaping them into something empowering instead of destructive. You are not lying to yourself. You are choosing the interpretation that builds you instead of breaking you. Reframing is how you shift from self-sabotage to self-command. It's how you stop being the enemy inside your own mind and start becoming the leader of your inner world. You begin to speak to yourself like someone worth supporting, worth believing in, worth fighting for. You start to recognize the strength behind your experiences, the wisdom behind your scars, the power behind your perseverance. The mental script that once insulted you becomes a script that instructs you. The voice that once doubted you becomes a voice that directs you. And this shift is not subtle. It is revolutionary. But rewriting your mental script is not a single moment. It is a discipline. Your mind will resist at first. Old thoughts will return. Automatic narratives will resurface. That's how the brain works. It favors the familiar even when the familiar hurts you. But every time those old scripts appear, you are given another chance to replace them. Another chance to reinforce the new story. Another chance to choose growth over fear. This repetition is how neural pathways change. This repetition is how identity changes. You are not simply thinking new thoughts. You are becoming a new person. There will be days when anxiety tries to pull you back, when doubt speaks louder than discipline, when the old script feels stronger than the new one. But understand this clearly. Progress does not mean the absence of old thoughts. It means the weakening of their influence. It means you hear them but no longer bow to them. It means you can witness your fear without surrendering to it. And in that moment of witnessing, in that moment of choosing your response instead of reacting automatically, you display the highest form of mental strength, the strength to rewrite your story in real time. Soon, the new script becomes natural. Your mind begins to reflect your strength instead of your weakness. It begins to amplify your clarity instead of your confusion. And this newfound command is the foundation for something even deeper: emotional mastery. Because once you learn to challenge your thoughts, you can begin shaping the emotions that those thoughts create. And that journey, the journey into emotional command, is where the next chapter leads. Chapter 8: Emotional Control, the Quiet Strength. Emotions are powerful. They shape your decisions, your reactions, your tone, your energy, and the direction of your entire day. Yet most people live as if emotions strike at random, as if they rise from nowhere, as if they are storms that appear without warning. But emotional storms are never spontaneous. They rise from unchallenged thoughts, the scripts you explored in the last chapter. Every feeling has a root. Every surge of anger, fear, frustration, or sadness begins as a thought, a belief, an interpretation your mind creates in an instant. If you do not notice that thought, the emotion grows unchecked. And when the emotion grows unchecked, it begins to control you. Emotional control is not the suppression of feeling. It is the mastery of the moment before the feeling takes over. To understand emotional control, you must understand the chain reaction inside your mind. A thought appears, often automatic, often deeply familiar. That thought creates a story, even if it's only a split-second interpretation. That story triggers an emotional response, and the emotional response fuels more thoughts. This cycle can build into a storm so quickly that you mistake the emotion for truth. You assume your frustration means something is wrong. You assume your fear means danger is real. You assume your anger is justified simply because you feel it intensely. But emotions are not proof. They are signals. Signals pointing you toward an unexamined thought, an unmet need, or an unresolved narrative inside your mind. When you begin to observe your emotional patterns, something remarkable happens. You create distance. You create space. Instead of being swept away by your emotions, you begin to witness them. You notice the rise before it becomes a flood. You recognize the tightness in your chest, the shift in your breathing, the tension in your jaw. This awareness is not small. It is the foundation of emotional strength. Because when you notice an emotion early, you gain the power to choose your response instead of reacting automatically. And every moment of chosen response builds the identity of someone who is calm under pressure, steady under stress, anchored even within chaos. Most people believe emotional control means numbing yourself, pushing feelings down, pretending nothing affects you. That is not strength. That is denial. Emotional control is the opposite. It is honesty. It is clarity. It is the ability to acknowledge what you feel without letting it distort your behavior, your judgment, or your vision. Strength is not the absence of emotion. Strength is the presence of awareness inside the emotion. Strength is being able to say, I feel this, but I am not owned by this. When you can do that, the emotional storms that once dominated you begin to lose their force. And this quiet strength, this inner steadiness, changes the way you move through the world. You stop reacting to every trigger. You stop carrying the emotional weight of other people's expectations, opinions, and moods. You stop being pulled into every conflict or pressured by every wave of anxiety. Instead, you develop a new emotional posture. Grounded, steady, deliberate. You no longer live at the mercy of external chaos because your internal world is no longer chaotic. The world may push, but you no longer sway. The world may provoke, but you no longer break. This is the strength people notice without understanding. This is the strength they call confidence, presence, or composure. But at its core, it is emotional control. One of the greatest truths you will ever discover is that emotions follow attention. Wherever your mind fixates, your emotions follow. Focus on fear, and you feel fear. Focus on failure, and you feel shame. Focus on uncertainty, and you feel anxiety. But the same mechanism can work in your favor. Focus on truth, and you feel clarity. Focus on progress, and you feel motivation. Focus on possibility, and you feel hope. The emotional palette of your life begins to shift when the focus of your mind shifts. This is why rewriting the mental script is essential. New thoughts create new emotions. New emotions create new behaviors. And new behaviors create a new life. But emotional control does not grow in cluttered environments. Chaos around you fuels chaos within you. A noisy world amplifies your internal noise. Disorganization, constant stimulation, unpredictable routines, toxic people, unfiltered inputs, all of these weaken the emotional space you are trying to build. Your environment shapes your nervous system more than you realize. It feeds your thoughts, stirs your emotions, and influences your reactions before you even notice. You cannot master your inner world while living inside an external world that constantly steals your peace. Emotional control requires physical reinforcement, a space, a structure, a rhythm that supports calm instead of sabotaging it. This is the moment where your journey begins to expand outward. You have learned to quiet your thoughts. You have learned to anchor your breath. You have learned to sharpen your focus. You have begun to rewrite the script inside your mind. Now you learn the next truth. Emotional mastery is not just an internal practice. It is a lifestyle. It is the alignment of your mind, your habits, your environment, and your boundaries. It is the decision to surround yourself with conditions that reinforce the calm you are creating. You do not build emotional strength only in silence. You build it in the spaces where you live, work, think, and recharge. Because once you understand how deeply your surroundings influence your emotions, you are ready for the next step, mastering not just what happens inside you, but what you allow around you. And that is where the journey continues. Chapter 9. Your environment is programming you. Your environment is not neutral. It is not passive. It is not something you simply live inside. It is something that shapes you every moment you exist within it. The world around you is constantly feeding your mind signals, stimuli, cues, and invitations. Every sound, every notification, every voice, every routine, every object in your space is programming you. Most people never realize this. They assume their lack of focus is personal failure. They assume their anxiety is internal. They assume their exhaustion is purely psychological. But in truth, much of what you feel is a response to what surrounds you. Environments trigger mental states long before thoughts arise. And when you live in a world that is loud, chaotic, and overstimulated, your mind becomes loud, chaotic, and overstimulated too. Look around. Your environment may already be shaping you in ways you did not consent to. The clutter on your desk pulls your attention in 10 directions before the day even begins. The noise from the street, the constant hum of distractions, the barrage of digital notifications, all of them chip away at your focus. They recruit your attention, drain your mental energy, and set the tone of your day long before you have a chance to choose it. Even the people around you contribute to this programming. Some calm you, some drain you, some sharpen you, some pull you back into older versions of yourself you've already outgrown. Your environment acts on you whether you notice it or not. This is the silent truth. You are being shaped all the time. The pain of this chapter is external, because the world is not designed with your clarity, discipline, or peace in mind. It is designed to consume your attention. Platforms, apps, ads, conversations, habits, everything around you competes for space in your mind. You live in an economy built on distraction. And when you do not actively guard your environment, it becomes a pipeline that pours noise into your life. This noise becomes your default mental state. This is why you feel tense before anything even goes wrong. This is why your mind feels crowded before you even think. This is why discipline feels difficult. Not because you are weak, but because your environment has been programming you for chaos instead of calm. But here's the turning point. Once you understand that your environment shapes you, you realize something powerful. You can shape your environment back. You can become the architect. You can design a space that feeds your mind instead of draining it. You can curate the signals, the inputs, and the energy that surround you. This is not about perfection. It is about alignment. Every object in your environment is either pulling you toward the person you want to become or pulling you away from them. When you choose what stays and what leaves, you choose the direction of your life. Start with your physical space, your room, your desk, your workspace. These are not just locations. They are psychological triggers. A cluttered room invites a cluttered mind. A chaotic desk invites chaotic thoughts. But a clean, intentional space becomes a sanctuary for focus. Remove what distracts you. Elevate what aligns with discipline, calm, and progress. Make your environment reflect your goals instead of sabotaging them. When your space is orderly, your mind begins to settle. When your surroundings are calm, your thoughts begin to quiet. You are not just cleaning a room, you are clearing mental pathways. Then look at your digital environment, the most influential environment of all. Your phone, your feeds, your notifications. These are pipelines into your subconscious. If you allow them to flood you with noise, they will scatter your attention and steal your peace. But you have the power to curate them. Silence non-essential notifications. Remove apps that drain your energy. Replace digital clutter with digital intention. Design your online world to match the mental world you want to build. Your digital space should serve your growth, not sabotage it. And then, perhaps most importantly, examine your social environment. The people you allow near you are part of your mental architecture. Some people create clarity. Some create confusion. Some encourage discipline. Some encourage self-sabotage. You cannot build a peaceful interior life while surrounding yourself with chaotic external influences. You don't have to cut people out, but you must control proximity. Emotional distance is a form of self-respect. Boundaries are a tool of mental engineering. When you protect your energy, you protect your mind. Once you begin reshaping your environment, something shifts. Discipline becomes easier. Focus becomes more natural. Emotional control becomes more sustainable. Your habits no longer fight your surroundings. They are supported by them. This is where true empowerment begins. Because your environment is not just a container for your life. It is the foundation of your habits, your mindset, and your identity. When you design it with intention, you change the way you think, feel, and act every day. Your environment has always been programming you. Now you learn how to program it back. And from this point forward, the next step becomes natural. Crafting daily habits that reinforce the life you're building. Chapter 10. Rituals that create a clear mind. Clarity is not an accident. Peace is not something you stumble into. A quiet mind is built, shaped, and reinforced through ritual. The small, deliberate practices that keep you grounded when the world tries to pull you into chaos. Most people want clarity without structure. They want peace without discipline. They want freedom without the habits that sustain it. But the truth is simple. Your days shape your mind, and your rituals shape your days. If you want a quieter mind, you must create a life that supports silence instead of suffocating it. The first ritual is morning silence. Not the rushed, half-distracted quiet you feel when you wake up late, but intentional stillness, the kind that lets your mind settle before the world begins demanding things from you. When you wake up and immediately take in noise, messages, notifications, conversations, obligations, you abandon control of your mental state. You start the day reacting instead of directing. But when you begin your morning in silence, you claim the day as yours. You create space between your thoughts. You give your nervous system room to breathe. Even 5 minutes of quiet morning presence resets your internal rhythm. You're not running. You're not chasing. You are simply here, fully in your own mind before anyone else enters it. Next comes the ritual of deep work, the discipline of focusing on one meaningful task without fragmentation. In a world obsessed with multitasking, deep work becomes a superpower. It sharpens the mind. It stabilizes emotions. It cuts through the fog of mental noise. When you set aside uninterrupted time, no phone, no distractions, no shifting between windows, you train your brain to stay present. You teach it how to hold a single thread of thought without breaking. Deep work blocks are more than productivity tools. They are emotional tools. They reduce anxiety. They reduce scattered thinking. They create momentum. And as your mind strengthens its focus, the rest of your day becomes quieter, smoother, more intentional. Your attention stops leaking into every passing distraction. It stays centered. Then comes the ritual most people never think about: low information evenings. The mind needs time to unwind, but digital overstimulation hijacks this natural process. Late night scrolling, endless videos, constant updates. They keep your mind buzzing long after your body wants to rest. This noise seeps into your dreams, your energy, your emotional stability. It steals your ability to reset. But when you end your day with low information input, soft light, quiet music, reflection, journaling, reading, your mind begins to descend into calm. You transition out of survival mode and return to yourself. By reducing nighttime noise, you prepare your brain for restoration. You sleep deeper. You wake clearer. You begin the next day already aligned. These rituals sound simple, but they reshape everything. Morning silence claims your mental territory. Deep work builds your focus. Low information evenings restore your balance. Each ritual becomes a weapon against the endless stream of noise that wants to control you. But there is one more ritual, perhaps the most important: the ritual of reflection. Without reflection, you move through life unconsciously. You repeat the same patterns, fall into the same emotional traps, and react to the same thoughts without ever questioning them. But when you sit with your thoughts at the end of the day, honest, unfiltered, without judgment, you begin to see your mind clearly. You notice the beliefs that held you back. You notice the habits that drained your energy. You notice the moments you lost yourself in noise. Awareness becomes the first act of transformation. Reflection is not self-criticism. It is self-observation. It is the quiet process of understanding your internal patterns so you can reshape them. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20. The length doesn't matter. What matters is consistency. You ask, where did I lose focus today? What noise seeped into my mind? What can I do differently tomorrow? You are not looking for perfection. You are looking for direction. Each day becomes a practice. Each night becomes a correction. And over time, your mind becomes clearer because you are actively guiding it instead of letting it wander. But rituals are only powerful when they're implemented with intention. They are not checkboxes. They are not chores. They are anchors. Each one a reminder of who you are trying to become. A ritual is a message you send to your mind. I choose clarity. I choose peace. I choose control. And when you build your life around these messages, something shifts. Your mind begins to believe you. It starts quieting on its own. It stops grasping for noise. It stops amplifying every worry. Rituals create rhythm, and rhythm creates stability. Yet there is a deeper challenge waiting beneath these habits, a challenge that every person on the path to clarity eventually faces. The voice inside your head that doesn't want you to grow. The inner critic, the inner saboteur, the inner noise that tells you you're not disciplined enough, not worthy enough, not strong enough to change. This voice grows louder whenever you try to rise. It resists your rituals. It doubts your progress. It undermines your peace. And unless you confront it, your rituals will always feel heavier than they need to be. You've learned how to shape your environment. You've learned how to build habits that protect your mind. Now it's time to go deeper, to challenge the internal voice that has been running your life from the shadows. Your next chapter is where the true battle begins. Facing the inner critic that whispers lies, stirs fear, and keeps the mind restless. And once you confront it, you'll reclaim a level of clarity few ever reach. Chapter 11. Silencing the Inner Critic. There is a voice inside you that speaks in tones sharper than any enemy you've ever faced. It whispers when you wake. It echoes when you fail. It grows louder when you try to rise. This voice, the inner critic, isn't just commentary. It is the lingering shadow of every doubt you've ever absorbed, every wound you've ever carried, every moment someone told you you weren't enough. It has lived inside you for years, disguised as truth, disguised as logic, disguised as realism. But it is none of those things. It is a script built from the past, a survival mechanism that has overstayed its purpose, an internal enemy pretending to protect you. And the painful part is this: you've believed it for so long that its voice feels like your own. The inner critic is formed quietly. It begins with a moment, a mistake you made that someone never let you forget, a failure you internalized, a standard you couldn't meet, a comparison that cut deeper than you admitted. Over time, those echoes turned into sentences. Those sentences shaped beliefs, and those beliefs became a default setting, a reflexive self-judgment that attacks before you even understand what you're experiencing. The pain is subtle but constant, a draining, corrosive force that makes you shrink from opportunities, doubt your decisions, and question your worth. This voice pretends it is keeping you safe, but really it is trapping you in a cage built from your own thoughts. You've carried this voice into every goal, every relationship, every attempt to grow. It tells you to stay small when you want to expand. It whispers that you're not ready when you finally take a step. It criticizes your mistakes before you even process what happened. And yet, the inner critic never tells the whole story. It points to your flaws but ignores your resilience. It highlights your failures but forgets your growth. It repeats the wounds but never the healing. It is an incomplete narrator, one that feeds on fear and uncertainty. But once you see it clearly, once you recognize that this voice is not truth but conditioning, something shifts. The power begins to return to you. Silencing the inner critic does not mean pretending everything is fine or drowning your pain in fake positivity. It means learning to speak to yourself with strength and compassion. The kind of compassion that doesn't let you hide from growth, but also doesn't let you destroy yourself. Compassionate strength is the antidote to the critic. It doesn't coddle. It recalibrates. It doesn't lie. It guides. It doesn't silence you. It silences the voice that tears you down. When you respond to your inner critic with grounded confidence, I hear you, but you don't decide who I become. Something inside you awakens. You start separating your identity from your insecurities. You stop treating your fears as facts and your doubts as destiny. This transformation begins with one crucial realization. The inner critic is loudest when you're changing. It rises when you step into the unknown, when you break old habits, when you challenge the patterns that once defined you. Growth triggers resistance. Progress awakens the past. The critic fights hardest when you're closest to evolving. Instead of seeing that resistance as a sign you're failing, start seeing it as a sign you're moving. The voice gets louder because you're disrupting its control. Every step forward threatens its dominance. And that is exactly why you cannot listen to it when you're building a quieter, stronger mind. To silence the inner critic, you must catch it in the act. You must recognize its patterns, the phrases it repeats, the fears it amplifies, the shame it tries to resurrect. Notice when the voice appears, when you make a mistake, when you start something new, when you're tired, when you're uncertain. Awareness breaks its invisibility. Once you see it, you can challenge it. Not with anger, not with denial, but with truth. Ask, is this thought based on reality or on fear? Is it helping me grow or holding me down? Would I speak to someone I love this way? These questions weaken the critic's authority. They expose its exaggerations. They reveal the gaps in its logic. And slowly, the voice loses its power. Then comes the deeper work, replacing the critic with a stronger internal voice. Not a voice that inflates your ego or promises effortless success, but one that stands in your corner like a mentor, a coach, a guardian. This voice tells you the truth without tearing you apart. It reminds you of your progress. It acknowledges your mistakes, but connects them to growth. It speaks to you the way you wish someone had spoken when you were younger. When you cultivate this voice, you reshape your entire inner world. You build an internal environment that supports clarity instead of chaos. And when your internal world changes, your external world follows. As this new voice strengthens, the inner critic fades. It becomes background noise, a faint echo instead of a commanding presence. It no longer dictates your choices. It no longer sabotages your confidence. It no longer defines your identity. You begin to move through life with a quieter mind, a steadier heart, a deeper sense of self-trust. And with each moment of inner calm, you get closer to the ultimate reward, internal peace. Because once you learn to silence the critic, you unlock the next step, building a mind that no longer needs to fight itself. Chapter 12. Peace is a daily decision. Peace is not a prize waiting at the end of your journey. It's not something you earn only after you fix every flaw, solve every problem, or silence every fear. Peace is a choice, a deliberate, repeated decision made in the middle of your imperfections, your responsibilities, your uncertainty. Most people imagine peace as a place, a destination they'll reach someday when life finally cooperates. But peace doesn't wait for your circumstances to align. Peace waits for you to choose it. It waits for you to decide what deserves space in your mind and what no longer has the right to live there. It waits for you to stop abandoning the present in pursuit of control you never needed. Peace is built moment by moment, choice by choice, breath by breath. You've spent most of your life believing that peace happens when the noise around you stops, when people behave, when work gets easier, when the future becomes predictable, when your past stops haunting you. But that belief is a trap, because life will always be loud, unpredictable, imperfect, messy. There will always be something unfinished, something uncertain, something unresolved. If you wait for silence outside, you will never silence the storm inside. Peace begins when you recognize that external chaos doesn't have to dictate your internal state. You can be surrounded by noise and still choose calm. You can stand in the middle of stress and still choose clarity. You can feel fear and still choose steadiness. Peace is a decision, not a reward. This decision begins with boundaries. Not the shallow kind people talk about in motivational slogans, but deep internal boundaries. The rules you create to protect your mental state. A boundary is not a wall to keep the world out. It is a filter that determines what you allow in. When you choose peace, you choose to stop letting every opinion, every criticism, every demand, and every distraction take root in your mind. You stop absorbing chaos that was never yours to carry. You stop letting other people's urgency become your emergency. Boundaries are the silent guardians of a peaceful mind. And when you tighten them, you reclaim power over your inner world. Peace also requires a decision about attention. What you focus on becomes your emotional reality. If you focus on every potential problem, you create anxiety. If you focus on comparisons, you create insecurity. If you focus on what's missing, you create lack. But when you direct your attention toward what strengthens you, your progress, your values, your growth, your presence, you create steadiness. Attention is the steering wheel of the mind. Peace is reached by guiding it with intention instead of letting it wander toward fear. Every moment offers a choice. You either feed the noise or feed the calm. You either fuel the storm or anchor yourself inside it. And each choice becomes part of the identity you're building. The most misunderstood part of peace is this: peaceful people still feel everything. They still experience anger, sadness, confusion, frustration. But they don't drown in those feelings. They don't cling to them. They don't let emotions become home. Peace means allowing feelings to exist without allowing them to take over. It means noticing the rise of tension without surrendering to it. It means understanding that emotions are weather, not climate, temporary, not permanent. A peaceful mind isn't one that never feels chaos. It's one that refuses to collapse under chaos. It's one that chooses calm even when storms surge. To practice peace daily, you must create rituals of pause, small moments where you step back from automatic reactions and ask, does this deserve my energy? Does this deserve my attention? Does this align with who I want to become? These questions shift you from reactivity to agency. They help you redirect your mind toward stillness. The more often you pause, the more power you reclaim. The more power you reclaim, the quieter your mind becomes. Peace is not a grand transformation. It's a series of small moments where you choose not to abandon yourself. And as these moments accumulate, something profound happens. Peace becomes part of your identity. You stop chasing calm and start embodying it. You begin moving through life with a softer presence, not because you've escaped struggle, but because you've stopped letting struggle rule your internal world. You make decisions with clarity instead of panic. You communicate with honesty instead of defensiveness. You respond with patience instead of impulse. Your emotional landscape changes because your inner narrative changes. You no longer see peace as something fragile, something easily broken. You see it as strength, a grounded, intentional force that stabilizes every part of your life. This is where your transformation deepens. Because once you understand that peace is a daily decision, you also understand that identity is a daily decision. Who you become is not shaped by a single breakthrough, but by the invisible choices you make every day. How you breathe, how you think, how you respond, how you protect your mind. Peace becomes the doorway to a new identity, one defined not by noise but by direction, not by fear, but by presence, not by reaction, but by mastery. And from here, you step into the ultimate shift, becoming the kind of person whose very way of being creates calm wherever they go. Chapter 13. Becoming the one who doesn't break. There comes a moment in every transformation where the goal is no longer just to quiet the mind, steady the breath, or manage the emotions. There comes a moment where the mission shifts, where you stop trying to survive the storms and start becoming the storm's equal. This is the moment where resilience becomes identity. This is the moment where you transform from someone who constantly repairs themselves into someone who rarely cracks. Becoming unbreakable isn't about perfection. It's about building a mind and spirit that bend without collapsing, that feel pressure without surrendering, that remain steady even when life stops playing fair. In this chapter, you step beyond tools and techniques. You step into identity, the identity of the person who doesn't break. Most people go through life fragile not because they are weak, but because they were never taught how strong they could become. They react to every difficulty like it's a personal attack, every setback like it's proof they're failing, every obstacle like it's confirmation they're not capable. Their minds shatter under pressure because they never learned how to stay centered when the world pulls them off balance. They are ruled by emotional chaos, by swirling thoughts, by the noise of fear and the distractions that chip away at their confidence. But fragility is not destiny. Fragility is conditioning, and conditioning can be rewritten. When you decide to become the one who doesn't break, you decide to become the creator of your internal world instead of the victim of it. Resilience begins with a decision. The decision to stop folding under pressure that was meant to shape you. Every moment of stress, every wave of uncertainty, every episode of doubt is sculpting you into something stronger. But only if you stop interpreting difficulty as defeat. Pain doesn't break you. Resistance to pain breaks you. Fear doesn't destroy you. Surrendering to fear destroys you. Challenges don't shatter you. Believing you shouldn't have challenges shatters you. The unbreakable mind is built on the belief that pressure is not punishment. Pressure is training. Adversity is not cruelty. Adversity is carving. When you shift this belief, the entire emotional landscape inside you changes. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to build within me?" This identity deepens when you learn to approach chaos with calm instead of panic. When life tightens around you, the fragile mind becomes frantic, rushing, spiraling, catastrophizing. But the resilient mind becomes still. It slows the breath. It centers the body. It refuses to feed the drama. The unbreakable person understands that emotional chaos is not a command. It is a signal. It is just information, not a verdict. When the storm rises, the unbreakable don't drown in it. They observe it. They step back from the noise and anchor themselves in the present moment. This calm is not passive. It is strength wrapped in silence. It is power disguised as stillness. It is command, the ability to hold your ground when everything in you wants to run. Becoming unbreakable also means redefining how you view failure. Most people crumble under failure because they treat it as identity. They see mistakes as reflections of who they are, not what they are learning. But the one who doesn't break understands that failure is not final. It is foundational. Every setback becomes data. Every error becomes direction. Every misstep becomes refinement. Failure stops feeling like judgment and starts feeling like feedback. When you no longer fear failure, the world loses its power to intimidate you. Your mind stops holding you hostage. You move forward with confidence because you no longer demand perfection from yourself. Only progress. Resilience is also forged through self-respect. When you honor your boundaries, honor your routines, honor your energy, you strengthen the structure that holds you together. Discipline becomes the armor for your emotional life. You do the hard things not because you like discomfort, but because you refuse to be controlled by weakness. You keep your promises to yourself because each promise strengthens the inner foundation you stand on. And when that foundation is solid, when you are rooted in your own integrity, nothing outside you can collapse the inside of you. People can disappoint you. Circumstances can challenge you. Plans can crumble. But you remain steady because your strength comes from within, not from what surrounds you. The unbreakable identity is forged in the moments where giving up would be easier. In the tension-filled space where your old habits try to drag you backward. In the quiet nights where no one sees the battle you're fighting. You become unshakable not through dramatic breakthroughs, but through the daily choice to rise one more time, breathe one more breath, take one more step. You build resilience in the small, invisible decisions, the ones where no one applauds, no one praises you, and no one even knows what you overcame. You become unbreakable in solitude, long before the world sees your strength. And as this identity forms, something profound emerges. An inner command. You no longer need life to be easy. You no longer need circumstances to bend in your favor. You don't seek comfort as your primary source of safety. You carry your own safety within you. You've built yourself into someone who cannot be manipulated by fear, by pressure, or by doubt. You've become the person who doesn't collapse under chaos. The person who stands tall in the storm and whispers, "I am still here." This chapter marks the awakening. Because once you become the one who doesn't break, you step into the final transformation. The quiet, powerful realization that you are no longer surviving your mind. You are leading it. And from that leadership comes the final ascent into clarity, mastery, and awakening. The quiet mind, the powerful life. There comes a moment near the end of every journey when you pause. Not because you're tired, but because you finally understand how far you've come. This is that moment. This is where the noise you carried for years no longer feels like a weight on your chest, but like a distant echo you've outgrown. You've walked through every layer of your own mind, its storms, its shadows, its tangled threads, and now you stand in a wider, quieter space, a space you carved with your own discipline, a space you earned. From the beginning, this path was never about perfection. It was about awakening. Awakening to the truth that your mind was never broken, never weak, only overwhelmed. It was trying to protect you, even as it drowned you in noise. You began in chaos, loops of worry, waves of overthinking, sensations that felt like survival instead of living. But look at you now. You understand the machinery of your thoughts. You know how they rise, how they twist, how they try to convince you that fear is the only safe place. And you know, deep in your bones, that you are not required to believe every voice that speaks inside your head. You've learned the architecture of mental clutter, the invisible weight that steals your peace without ever touching your skin. You've seen how decisions, distractions, and digital overload crowd the mind until clarity becomes a rare luxury. And yet, in that mess, you found the courage to remove what was unnecessary, to choose stillness, to choose quiet, to choose a life with space in it. You discovered that stillness isn't a passive state. It's a discipline, a deliberate act of power. In a world addicted to noise, your calm is rebellion. Your breathing became your anchor, a silent tool capable of pulling you out of any internal storm. One breath at a time, you reclaimed control from chaos. One inhale to steady the mind. One exhale to release what doesn't belong. This is how warriors are made, not always through battle, but through the mastery of their own inner world. And then came focus. Your blade, sharp and unyielding. You learned that a wandering mind is a weakened mind, but a focused one? A focused mind can move mountains. You discovered the force that comes from pouring your attention into one thing at a time, cutting through noise, carving a straight path through the fog. This wasn't simply productivity, it was power. Power over distraction, power over anxiety, power over the parts of your life that once felt uncontrollable. You rewrote the script in your head. You challenged the thoughts that once ruled you. You saw the old narratives for what they were. Fragments from a past version of you who didn't yet know how strong they could become. You replaced self-sabotage with self-command. You became the author of the story inside your own skull. Then you stepped deeper, into emotional mastery. You learned that your feelings aren't random explosions of chaos, but reflections of thoughts, beliefs, and patterns. You understood that to calm your emotions, you must first calm the stories behind them. You learned that strength doesn't mean suppressing emotion. It means guiding it, directing it, holding it with steady hands and a steady mind. And from there, the world around you came into focus. You saw clearly that your environment was not neutral. It was programming you. Every person, every sound, every digital ripple was shaping the way you think and feel. But instead of being shaped, you took control. You curated your world like an architect designs a structure. You built surroundings that aligned with clarity, discipline, and peace. Then came the rituals, the quiet tools that carve order into chaos. Morning silence, deep work, low information evenings, the discipline of reflection. You built practices that will outlive this audiobook, habits that will support you long after the world tries to pull you back into noise. These rituals became a shield, a structure, a declaration that your clarity is no accident. It is built. You even faced the inner critic, the voice that once tore you down from the inside. You learned to silence it not with aggression, but with understanding. You saw that it was made from old wounds, old fears, old memories that no longer define you. And instead of letting it dictate your worth, you rose above it. You reclaimed authority over your own identity. And finally, you learned the deepest truth. Peace is not a feeling. It is a decision, a choice made moment by moment. You learned that peace is not something you chase through achievement or control. It is something you practice like a muscle, like a ritual, like a sacred vow you renew each day. Now, look at who you've become. You are not the same person who began this journey. You are steadier, sharper, quieter in the ways that matter and louder in the ways that count. You have become someone who doesn't break at the first sign of pressure, someone who doesn't drown in their own thoughts, someone who stands firm, not because life got easier, but because you rose higher. This is the transformation. This is the awakening. This is the new identity taking shape inside you, a person with a quiet mind and a powerful life. Because a quiet mind is not empty. A quiet mind is focused. A quiet mind is disciplined. A quiet mind is dangerous in the best possible way. It sees clearly. It moves with purpose. It acts from strength, not fear. It leads instead of reacts. It builds instead of collapses. And now you carry that power with you. You've earned it. You've trained for it. You've stepped into it. The noise that once controlled you no longer defines you. The thoughts that once overwhelmed you no longer own you. The chaos that once filled your days no longer stands a chance against you. You have entered a new life, one where clarity is normal, focus is natural, and peace is your default state. A life where you don't run from storms. You walk through them with calm breath, clear vision, and unshakable discipline. This is who you are now. This is the quiet mind. This is the powerful life.